What if the most obvious answer on the cobbles is actually a dangerous lie? We've been waiting since April for the truth about Theo Silverton to finally come out. But as we get closer to the big reveal next week, you have to wonder, was his death really just a moment of madness, or is it proof that Weatherfield's moral compass has finally shattered for good? We're heading toward the dinner party from hell, and Coronation Street is about to serve up a killer on a silver platter. But before those handcuffs come out, we need to ask a question that almost everyone is ignoring. Is the real murderer the person holding the weapon, or the one who set the table in the first place? Think about the situation we're in. For months, Theo's ghost has been hanging over every single conversation in the Rovers. It's a dark reminder of that night in April that changed everything. Now, the show has finally confirmed that the clock runs out on Monday, June 22nd. We're getting an hour-long special that's probably going to dismantle the lives of Gary Windass and Sarah Platt. But this isn't just a simple whodunit. This is a psychological trap. And the man setting it is Kit. He seems to find way more joy in destroying people than actually finding justice. By inviting Todd, Summer, Maria, and Gary to dinner, he isn't just passing the potatoes. He's passing a death sentence on someone's freedom. Now, why is the show choosing a dinner party for this? If you look back at the history of the street, it used to thrive on what we call kitchen sink realism. You know, the kind of drama that happens over a brew in a cramped living room. But things have changed. We've entered an era of plot inflation. That's a fancy way of saying the stakes have to keep getting higher and higher just to keep us from switching over to a streaming service. A dinner party creates a pressure cooker. It forces characters who usually have their own separate lives into one explosive room. And next week, the show is going to use flashbacks to bridge the gap between a boring dinner and the violent reality of what happened back in April. Let's talk about the Gary Windass paradox. Gary has spent years changing from a quick-tempered tradesman into something much darker. He's a villain who genuinely believes he's the hero of his own story. So, why was he even at the murder scene? Well, Gary doesn't kill for fun. He kills out of a distorted sense of protection. In his head, removing a threat like Theo isn't a crime. It's just a chore he has to do for his family. But don't you feel like he's suffocating? He's booking surprise holidays for Maria and the kids, but he isn't doing it for the son. He's doing it to see if he can still control their happiness while he's lying through his teeth. It must be incredibly lonely to perform joy while you're secretly calculating how many days you have left before a prison cell. The funny thing is, we need to stop looking at Gary as a cold-blooded killer and start seeing him as a man with homicide exhaustion. He's trapped in a loop where he has to commit a new sin just to cover up the old one. He's a perennial loser in the game of morality. The show is using him to ask a tough question. Can you ever really be good again once you've decided that some lives are worth less than others? Personally, I think his attempt to buy Maria's silence with a holiday is pretty insulting. But it's exactly what his ego needs. He thinks a tan can hide a bloodstain. It's arrogant, and honestly, I disagree with everything he's doing. He deserves the crash that's coming. His behavior is rooted in deep insecurity and a desperate need for control. He doesn't trust the law, so he created his own version of justice where he's the judge, the jury, and the executioner. Then we have the evolution of Sarah Platt. She's not that vulnerable woman we remember from the Richard Hillman days anymore. She's a survivor who has become dangerously comfortable with the darkness and the men around her. Why is she sharing secret messages and hushed hugs in the street with Gary? It's because she's addicted to the high of a secret. She's had so much trauma in her life, from teenage pregnancy to being abducted, that she finds a strange sense of safety in a man who is willing to kill for her. Sarah is probably feeling a toxic mix of terror and validation right now. If the truth comes out, she doesn't just lose Gary. She loses the version of herself that is special, enough to be protected at any cost. If you really look at them, Sarah and Gary aren't in love. They're in a mutually assured destruction pact. They're held together by the weight of what they know. If one of them falls, the other gets dragged right down into the abyss. And Sarah's decision to hide the truth from Maria while playing the concerned friend is peak Platt behavior. I find it pretty reprehensible. She's seen what happens when secrets explode. She lived through that canal plunge, yet she's steering the car right back into the water. She's more worried about her reputation than Theo's life. That makes her just as dangerous as whoever held the weapon. And what about Kit? He's the ultimate manipulator here. He represents the shift in Corey's style from a relatable community to a thriller-driven drama. Why did he widen the guest list? Because he's a modern villain who uses social engineering instead of a wrench to break people. He knows Gary and Sarah are a tangled web of secrets, and he wants to pull the thread just to watch it all unravel. Does Kit even feel empathy? It doesn't look like it. He just feels satisfaction. There's something cold about a man who can plan a proposal to Sarah while simultaneously planning a dinner party to expose her. He views the people on the street as pieces on a board, not human beings. To be honest, he's the most terrifying person on the show right now because he doesn't have a breaking point. He just has a plan. He's playing a dirty game, but the people he's playing against aren't exactly saints either. Then there's Maria. Her intuition has become her greatest weapon. She's spying on Gary and Sarah because her internal alarm is set to the exact frequency of Gary's lies. She's been the wronged wife so many times that she can smell a secret from a mile away. But internally, she must be feeling a crushing sense of déjà vu. The fear of losing, again, is probably more painful than the idea that her husband might be a killer. Maria represents the voice of the viewer. Her suspicions are our suspicions. When she finally has her outburst at the dinner party, it's going to be the moment we've all been waiting for. But here's the problem. Her timing is a disaster. By accusing them of an affair instead of a murder, she's giving them a small fire to put out while the whole house is actually on fire. She's playing right into Kit's hands. The tension isn't just going to rise at this dinner, it's going to shatter. We've seen the teasers: smashed glass, flying furniture, tempers at the breaking point. This is the pure definition of plot inflation. They're taking a normal social event and turning it into a full-scale showdown. But the real drama is the psychological warfare. When Maria makes her move, it's going to trigger those flashbacks that finally show us what happened in April. We're going to see the uncomfortable truths that everyone has been trying to bury, and let's look at the bigger picture. This reveal isn't just ending one story. It's going to trigger a cast exodus that people have been talking about for months. If Gary is the killer, he is to go. That leaves Maria and the kids in ruins. But the real fallout might be for the Platts. If Sarah is an accomplice, the foundation of the street, the Platt family, is fractured forever. We might even see Sarah go into a downward spiral like her mother Gail did years ago. And what about Kit's proposal? I bet it becomes a weapon for blackmail. He doesn't want a wife, he wants a hostage. The aftermath of this is going to move the show even further into ITV thriller territory. You have to wonder if this is the beginning of the end for the soul of the street. To understand why this Theo reveal matters so much, you have to look at where the show started. Back in 1960, the drama was about everyday life. Now it has to be faster and louder. In the 90s, they went from 14 scenes an episode to over 20. Now, an hour-long block is the standard. It means a simple death isn't enough anymore. It has to be a tangled web. Are we just obsessed with these reveals because we've watched these characters grow up? Sarah went from a teenage pregnancy to potentially being a murderer's accomplice. That's a long road. Her downfall isn't just a plot point. It feels like a personal loss for us. There's a lot of unrest in the audience right now, especially with legends like Gail Platt leaving after 50 years. Everything feels uncertain. Maybe we want Gary to be the killer because it gives us someone clear to blame for how much the show is changing. It's like a stress test for the new streaming-friendly format. The Theo reveal is basically the clickbait designed to get us to log onto IDVX or YouTube at 7 a.m. It's a far cry from the days when 21 million people would tune in just to see if Bette Lynch got a job. The show is becoming a content engine, and unfortunately, characters like Theo are just the fuel. If the show reveals that Kit is the killer, which is a huge fan theory right now, it would be a brilliant twist. But if it's just Gary again, I worry we're all going to hit homicide exhaustion. We've seen him do this before. For the show to actually evolve, the reveal needs to change the families forever. Not just give us another villain arc. Bigger isn't always better, but in the world of modern soaps, a quiet reveal is a forgotten one. Think about the visual grammar of how this is being shot. The flashbacks are going to feel different than the dinner party. That sense of apartness is a trick to make us feel the horror of the crime while we're also watching Maria argue over wine. It turns us into spies. We're like watchers in the garden, snooping on secrets just like the characters do. It feeds our ego because we think we know more than Maria does. But does she have the whole story? Or are we all being played by the writers? As we get to June 22nd, everything is coming to a head. We've got gun showdowns at the garage, Sam's mental health crisis, and Debbie's struggle with dementia. It's all background noise to the main event. The show is mixing the old and the new, putting established characters like Sarah and Gary into these dark, new possibilities. It's a study in ego and control. The everyday isn't enough anymore because we've been trained to want the sensational. The murderer might be Gary, but the victim might be the traditional charm of the street itself. So, here's the big debate. Do you think Gary is a villain who needs to be written out, or is he a necessary evil that keeps things interesting? And if those flashbacks show that Sarah was actually the one who killed Theo and Gary is just covering for her, would you still support her? Or is that the end of the Platt legacy for you? This reveal is going to be the biggest payoff we've seen in years. But is it worth what we're losing? We're covering every single update on this, so if you want to stay in the loop, make sure you subscribe and turn on those notifications. You won't want to miss our breakdown the second that episode drops. Hit the like button if you're ready for Gary to finally face the music, or if you think he's going to find a way to wiggle out of it one more time. Drop a comment below with your number one suspect. Is it Gary, Sarah, or someone we haven't even... What if the most obvious answer on the cobbles is actually a dangerous lie? We have been waiting since April for the truth about Theo Silverton to finally crawl out from the shadows of the viaduct, and I don't know about you, but the tension is starting to feel unbearable. Next week, we are finally getting the answers we've been craving in a massive hour-long special airing on Monday, June 22nd. But before the handcuffs come out, we have to ask a question that almost everyone is ignoring. Is the real murderer the one holding the weapon, or the one who set the table for this disaster? Coronation Street has officially confirmed the reveal date, and it's being framed around a dinner party that is going to serve up a killer on a silver platter. But this isn't just a simple whodunit moment. It is a calculated, psychological trap being set by Kit, the man who seems to find more joy in dismantling lives than actually delivering justice. Think about the situation we're in right now. For months, the ghost of Theo Silverton has been haunting every single conversation in the Rovers, acting as a dark reminder of that night in April that changed everything. The show is using an hour-long block to dismantle the lives of Gary Windass and Sarah Platt, and honestly, it feels like the show's moral compass is about to shatter beyond repair. By inviting Todd, Summer, Maria, and Gary to dinner, Kit isn't just passing the potatoes, he's passing a death sentence on someone's freedom. The funny thing is, why choose a dinner party for such a massive reveal? If we look back at the history of the street, it used to thrive on what we call kitchen sink realism. You know the vibe, drama over a brew in a cramped living room, where characters were relatable and the stakes felt human. But as the years have gone by, we've entered an era of what experts call plot inflation. It's this idea that one story has to top the last one, leading to more sensational, faster-paced drama. A dinner party provides that perfect pressure cooker environment where the visual grammar of the show can shift from the mundane to the cinematic, using a string of flashbacks to bridge the gap between a boring meal and a violent past. Let's dive into the Gary Windass paradox, because this guy is fascinating. Gary has spent years transitioning from a quick-tempered tradesman into something much darker and more complex. He's become a villain who genuinely believes he is the hero of his own story. My interpretation is that Gary doesn't kill for sport or because he's inherently evil. He kills out of a distorted sense of protection. It's like a psychological survival mechanism triggered by his own failures. In his head, removing a threat like Theo wasn't a crime. It was just a chore he had to do to keep his world stable. But don't you feel like he's suffocating? He's booking surprise holidays for Maria and the family, but he isn't doing it because he wants to see the sun. He's doing it because he needs to see if he can still control the happiness of the people he's lied to. There is a profound sense of loneliness in a character who has to perform joy while secretly calculating the distance between himself and a prison cell. Well, think about it. Should we really view Gary as a cold-blooded killer? Or is he someone suffering from homicide exhaustion? That's a term used to describe characters who are trapped in a loop where they have to commit a new sin just to cover up the old one. It makes him a perennial loser in the game of morality, much like the archetypes of Stan and Hilda Ogden from back in the day. The show is using him to ask us if a person can ever truly be good, again once they've decided that some lives are worth less than others. I'll be honest with you, Gary's attempt to buy Maria's silence with a holiday brochure is pretty insulting. It's peak arrogance to think a tan can hide a bloodstain, and while I disagree with his actions, you have to admit the guy has audacity. His behavior is rooted in deep insecurity and a need for control, probably a remnant of his war veteran trauma that has mutated into a god complex. He doesn't trust the system, so he created his own version of justice where he acts as judge, jury, and occasionally executioner. Then we have Sarah Platt, and her evolution has been wild to watch. She isn't the vulnerable woman archetype we saw during the Richard Hillman years anymore. She has become a survivor who is dangerously comfortable with the darkness of the men around her. Why is she sharing secret messages and hushed hugs in the street with Gary? Because Sarah is addicted to the high of a forbidden secret. Her psychology was shaped by years of being a victim of sensationalist plots, like her teenage pregnancy or that internet abduction. She isn't just an accomplice. She's a witness who finds a strange sense of safety in a man willing to kill for her. Internally, she's likely feeling a toxic blend of terror and validation. To have a man like Gary risk everything for her gives her a distorted sense of worth. She's terrified that if the truth about Theo comes out, she won't just lose Gary. She'll lose the version of herself that is special, enough to be protected at any cost. We really need to reframe Sarah and Gary's relationship. It isn't a simple affair, despite what Maria thinks. It's a mutually assured destruction pact. They aren't held together by love, but by the gravity of the secret they share. If one falls, the other is dragged right into the abyss. In my opinion, Sarah's decision to hide the truth from Maria while playing the concerned friend is peak Platt behavior, and frankly, it's reprehensible. She has seen what happens when secrets explode. She lived through the Richard Hillman Canal plunge, for heaven's sake. Yet, here she is, steering the car right back into the water. I think she's more concerned with her own reputation than Theo's life, and that makes her just as dangerous as the killer. She's showing a classic trauma bond response where her past experiences with abusive men have conditioned her to find comfort in high-stakes, dangerous situations. Her ego is fed by the fact that she is the only one Gary trusts with the truth. The funny thing is, we should interpret this reveal as a stress test for the show's 2026 streaming-friendly format. By making the episode available on YouTube and IDVX from 7 a.m., the network is admitting that the traditional prime-time viewing experience is dying. The Theo reveal is the clickbait designed to drive digital engagement, a far cry from the days when 21 million people would tune in just to see who became the manager of the Rovers. The show is evolving into a content engine, and Theo Silverton's body is essentially the fuel. I honestly believe that if the show reveals Kid as the killer, it would be a brilliant subversion of the corrupt cop trope. But if it's just Gary again, I fear we're all going to suffer from homicide exhaustion. We've seen Gary kill before. We've seen him cover his tracks. For the show to really evolve, the reveal needs to be something that changes the status quo for the families, not just another villain of the month. ARC, as you watch the episode, pay attention to the visual grammar of that dinner party. How are the flashbacks shot? Are they cinematic, or do they feel like the rest of the show? The use of flashbacks is a narrative trick that allows the show to go more on location, without losing the intimacy of the studio. It satisfies our demand for high production values, but it can also make the murder feel sensational because it exists in a different visual register than Maria arguing over wine. It's a psychological trick to make us feel the horror of the crime while maintaining the humor of the social gaffes at the table. It transforms us into spies, snooping on the secrets of the residents just as the characters do. It feeds our ego as expert viewers who know more than the characters on screen, especially Maria, who is snooping with only half the information. I really hope the director doesn't over-experiment with the style like they did with the Spider episode in 1992. If the style draws too much attention to itself, it confuses the plight of the characters. The Theo reveal needs narrative clarity, not